Hey, what's up guys, AkkiVGC back today for ITL finals, going up against a really good friend of mine, AkkiVGC, the commissioner of the league, and you guys all know Aki. He's been on my channel numerous times in matches and also as a co-commentator for some of the ITL playoff games. So yeah, Aki, very good friend of mine and phenomenal battler, easily earns his place on the Mount Rushmore of Draft League players. So yeah, we are facing my man Aki, and if you guys remember, we did face Aki earlier on in the regular season of the ITL. We got pretty unlucky with Mega Aerodactyl missing an Aquatail, which actually led to ultimately losing that game. But it was still a very close game for the most part, and you already know this is going to be an exciting final. So the approach I decided to take this game is a little bit different from the one I took earlier on in the season for a number of reasons. I know Aki's going to be mixing it up. I don't expect him to be bringing exactly the same kind of team he brought last game, and I also expect him to maybe think I was going to lean more towards a bulkier approach, as that is typically safer in kind of volatile matchups like this, as well as it is sort of a preference of mine to bring a team with a very solid sort of bulky backbone with some nice offense to back it up. But I'm bringing a pretty interesting team this week, and I don't think it's necessarily something Aki's going to be expecting. You know, I've got a few sets on here that I think will be able to catch him off guard, and I'm pretty excited to show them off. But predicting what Aki's going to bring to this finals is pretty tricky, because he's got a lot of mons that really put in work here. He's got a lot of really solid just defensive pivots in this game, like Mega Venusaur and Tapu Fini and Torn, which just perform very well versus me. And then Metagross is also a pretty solid stop to a lot of mons on my team, or even just offensive win con in the Rock Polish set. So as usual for finals, I am going to be showing you my team builder and just give you a little insight into the kind of work that goes into my finals matches. So as you guys can see, I've just done a little bit of, I guess, note taking. And I built several different teams, as you can see down here. I built many different teams with many different viable sets for different mons that I could build with, but ultimately I did settle upon this team that you see here. So this is the ITL finals variant of Muck, the Muck team, and these are the 11 mons Aki has to choose from. And this is kind of the team I am expecting to see most. Mega Venusaur is a mon that I think he will bring, just purely because it does check stuff on my team like Shaman, Gren, even stuff like Celesteela. It can check if I'm not a Z-move variant with Z-Fly. It can check Nidoqueen if it's especially defensive. It can check a lot on my team, honestly. Venu is just so obnoxiously fat that I'm really forced to bring breaking sets on my team in order to, either breaking sets or taunt in order to wear that thing down. And then you see the Fini there. I think Fini is definitely likely to come again if he does really fear Gren. Last game I didn't actually bring Gren. Last time I played Aki in the regular season. I'll show you the team I brought. It was this team here, this week 6 team. So I had this fast offensive Arrow. I had a Taunt Super Fang Mew. I had a pretty mixed kind of. It's a pretty bulky offensive Shaman, nothing too crazy on the set. Then I had a Rest Talk Eel, which actually put in a ton of work. And I had this defensive Selly, and I had a Spidef Nidoqueen. So based on this team that I brought in week 6, he may still prioritize bringing Fini, because I didn't bring stuff like Gren in that game. And if he thinks I am going to mix it up, he may be inclined to bring something like that to check Gren, if he doesn't choose to bring Venusaur. So we're gonna jump into what I ended up rolling with for this finals match. So I'm gonna jump into the team here. Now, first up we have a physically defensive Selly. I actually didn't deviate from what I brought in the first time I faced them. I built many teams, as you guys saw just then. Z-Fly Selly was on a number of those teams, but ultimately I just felt that the threat of Rock Polish Life Orb Metagross was too strong versus my team. This particular team, like, obviously I do have stuff like Slowbro and Celesteela on my roster, but if he manages to chip down my team enough and remove Slowbro from the game, Rock Polish, Thunder Punch, Life Orb Metagross can really just run through me if I don't bring a defensive Selly. If I bring an offensive Selly, then all he needs is a little bit of chip, and then Life Orb Adamant Thunder Punch can kill Selly, because despite Selly's natural amazing bulk, it's actually not that bulky, and that sounds a bit crazy, but unless you actually invest, it doesn't take hits. Like, offensive variants do not take hits as well as you'd think, and this is coming from a guy who loves Selly, but I know how Selly works, and if you do choose to run offensive, you are trading off huge amounts of longevity with this mon. So as fantastic as Z Selly is, like an autonomized late game Z Selly set with a jelly nature to outspeed Rotom, that was something I definitely considered for a long time. It was not worth opening up myself to the monster that is Rock Polish Metagross. So we do have other checks for Metagross on here, but this Selly is also fantastic in checking a lot of mons on his team, like Mamoswine, Hydra, for example. I also check Hitmonlee. I can take on Frostlass easily, Mesprit. I can spread Leech outside of Venusaur. I can take on Tornadus as well. So this it's a very solid kind of backbone in this particular team that I'm bringing, and I don't actually have a ton of it's a pretty bulky offensive team. Honestly, it's not like a balanced team in my opinion. So Selly is like the one sort of backbone that I can fall on in terms of defense. But then we have probably the most creative set this week, and that is for this finals match. You know, we got to go all out, bringing a defensive Greninja. Now this ninja's pretty nice indeed. Mamoswine was a massive threat to my team in week 6. It is a massive threat in general. Life Orb with knockoff can cause a lot of problems to Slowbro if he does have spikes or rocks up. And I am expecting him to stack me this week. I definitely think Frostlass is coming. He made a trade for that earlier in the season, I believe, and I really feel as though that's got some pretty big potential to come to this finals matchup. Which makes me feel like he will try and capitalize on Mamoswine's matchup versus me. Mamoswine had a lot of fun last game with Icicle Crash, and as you can see, I don't have an Icicle Crash switching on my team outside of Gren. Selly, obviously, I am defensive, but it's not going to appreciate coming in on rocks, taking a Life Orb Adamant. Even a Life Orb Jolly, Icicle Crash does quite a ton. And Gren is actually really interesting because this one here I can because I have like solid EQ switch-ins in Celesteela and Aerodactyl, and Greninja isn't your orthodox like Icicle Crash switch-in. This mon actually functions as a very nice offensive switch into Mamoswine. I can of course take an EQ from full or even after rocks. I think I ran this set so I could take an EQ after rocks. And after lefties avoid Ice Shard taking me out. But the nice thing about this Gren is that most of the time he will be inclined to click Icicle Crash versus my team, just because he doesn't want to give Selly a free switch in and not punish that. If that is defensive, that's going to be healing up a lot and getting lefties back on the turn that he clicks EQ. So having this Gren here to switch into those Icicle Crashes, always scare it up with Scald and getting up spikes, which is going to be massive versus his team. If he does bring Tapu Fini, I do have Taunt on this. I can live a Moonblast from Tapu Fini with ease due to my max HP and nice little defense Spit F investment here. This speed here is in order to outspeed Hydreigon. If he does bring that Frostlass of his, I don't expect him to be creeping sort of max speed with it. I think he'll be creeping Mismagius if he does decide to bring it, but I actually didn't creep his Frostlass with this set because I didn't think it was like 100% coming. If you look at the team, I did expect him to bring Frostlass is one of the mons that I felt like could come, but it wasn't 100% likely to come, which is how I felt the other mons in this team. If he doesn't bring something like Venu and opts for a more offensive team, Frostlass could definitely come in its place, but I really felt like Venu would come just purely because of the amazing matchup it has versus me. Mamo's got to come, Rotom's got to come, Venu, yeah, like I said, may come, Metagross has to come, and if it doesn't, I'm going to be extremely happy not to see that. Hydreigon, just too nice versus me not to come, and Tapu Fini is pretty solid in a defogging role, as well as being able to check Gren and Can't Mind alongside something like Mew. So that's the reason why I opted not to creep the Frostlass in this game. Aggressive creeps are going to come into play a lot in this game, as I know Aki won't be running like 252 spreads. That man likes his nice calculated spreads and offensive creeps, and that is why I opted to run this amount of speed with my Gren. So Spike, Scald, Dark Pulse. Dark Pulse is essential for chipping down the Venu. If I am feeling aggressive and I don't want to taunt him on a turn he wants to synthesize, I can always taunt and then click Dark Pulse if I'm really feeling myself like he's gonna knock or like Sludge Bomb predicting sorry, Hidden Power Fire predicting my Silly to come in, or even Earthquake predicting my Muck to come in. But Dark Pulse is also really nice for stuff like the Frostlass, and he also had a Mesprit on his team, so it's really nice for that as well. I can taunt, Dark Pulse that thing down. What else does Dark Pulse hit? It's also pretty nice for the Alamamola and the Metagross, obviously, which is a massive threat to my team. I can take a Life Orb, Thunder Punch from full with this Gren, and easily to a KO with Dark Pulse. So next up we have a pretty nice Muck. This Muck, Power Punch, Poison Jab, Sleep Talk, Rest. It's aimed at taking advantage of Taunt on his team. I do feel like this Muck is a fantastic win con once I remove Mamoswine. So if he plays recklessly with Mamoswine, I can really just put in a lot of work with this Muck. I am max BDF because I do want answers to Hydreigon, and the nice thing about this is if he is Taunt Hydreigon, it won't be able to stop my Muck from setting up on it with Power Punch. Power Punch plus Poison Jab is very solid. It allows me to beat Mega Venusaur. It allows me to beat even like Metagross if it is an Earthquake. I can just spam Power Punch versus it, but Meteor Mash is still going to be doing a ton, and obviously I want to remove that with Sally Gren. But you know, before this thing tries to put in work. But it is a very solid disruptor. I don't think he would be expecting Power Punch. He may be expecting Curse, like Curse Mono Knock, or like Poison isn't really ideal because he does have Mamoswine and Metagross, but he may be expecting Curse, and Power Punch bypasses Taunt, which would be aimed at shutting down Curse variants of this Muck. So a very solid mon in this matchup. Very solid indeed, and I can always set up Power Punches versus the Finny if he wants to taunt me, making an aggressive play, and then start firing off Poison Jab. So very solid mon here. It also does allow me to check Frostlass and Mesprit pretty nicely. So then we have a speedy Mew here with Calm Mind and Aura Sphere. I think I said earlier this Gren's speed was designed to outspeed Hydreigon. I don't think that was correct. I think this is a bit faster than Hydreigon. This Mew, no, that was to outspeed max speed Hydreigon. This Mew's creep, this game happened a long time ago. This Mew's creep was designed to outspeed Hydreigon, creeping a Mew that was creeping his Finny, I believe. That was what the creep was intended to do. And I don't expect it to be running a max speed Hydra. I think he's going to prioritize bulk in this game and offense, and I think he'll be running a bit of a slower Hydra, maybe hitting like 152 or 151 or 152. I think 152 allows me to outspeed Hitmonlee with this given spread, so I think he'll be opting for like 153 or 154, something like that. 155 is a pretty aggressive creep, but it does allow me to outspeed something like that. I can always live a Dark Pulse from full if I need to. But Calm Mind, Aura Sphere, and Psychic does a number to his team. I can always Calm Mind up versus stuff like Mega Venusaur. If you look at his team here, I can Calm Mind up versus Mega Venusaur. Aura Sphere allows me to hit Hydreigon, Metagross for great damage. And the only thing I'm really walled by is Mesprit, but I don't really think he's going to bring Mesprit. And if he does, I don't think he's going to bring a Calm Mind variant. I will be able to set up on it with Mew and take it on. I outspeed his Finny, and I can always Calm Mind and Psychic that thing down. The only real thing I have to worry about is this is a potential trick from the Rotom, so I'm going to have to scout that out. Have to worry about Taunt from his Tornadus, but if he does taunt me, I can always Psychic him on the Taunt, and if he's Taunt, then he's not AV, which is really nice for the rest of my team. Very nice for the Mamoswine as well. Aura Sphere is pretty essential in bopping that thing after some prior damage if I get to +1. So just a very solid win con in this game, very solid defensive check to a lot of his team as well. If you see here, like, with max HP and this much defense, I can take on a lot of his team, and it's just a very solid check to stuff like Mega Venusaur. If he is Sleep Powder Venu, I can always sack off my Muck to the Sleep, and then set up with Mew in its face. So if he's Leech Seed, Sleep Powder, like Synthesis, Sludge Bomb or something like that, he's pretty much walled by Selly, he's walled by this Muck if I sack it off to sleep. And my Mew can just set up on it all day. Then we have a pretty interesting area spread here. Very SpDef, very bulky, but with enough attack to deal with his team. So Taunt, Stone Edge, Roost, and Crunch on this set. It does a lot of work to his team. He doesn't have a lot that really wants to switch into this thing. If you look at his team here, Metagross, his only real rock resist. I don't really consider Hitmonlee a rock resist because it still gets 2 KO by Stone Edge. Unless it's really bulky for some reason. with Crunch, I bulk the Metagross, and like I said, Metagross is a real threat to my team. It's one of the biggest offensive threats to my team. So having a way on this this arrow to actually damage that is pretty important. Crunch also gives me a 100% accurate option versus a weakened Rotom, a weakened Venu. If you guys remember, as I said earlier in the last game, we did lose that game due to an Aqua Tail miss. So having Crunch gives us a a non-risk, like a risk-free option versus a lot of his team. I do have Taunt, so I can prevent recovery from stuff like Venusaur. I can beat that 1v1 because I am so Spadef. Giga Drain won't be doing too much. That's even if he opts to bring Giga Drain. I don't think he even brought Giga Drain last game. I think he brought Sludge, Synthesis, Leech Seed, and Sleep Powder. So this arrow is very strong here. I can always take Moonblast from Finny. If he brings Surf, I can even chew that. I can take on the Hydra 1v1, provided it's taunted. I can always taunt Roost up. This thing is a very solid check to Hydreigon because I do have taunt and Roost and I am so bulky. So yeah, with this much Spadef, obviously this is Aero pre-Mega Evo, so these stats don't look too impressive, but obviously when I am Mega Evolved, these stats are a lot nicer. So yeah, very solid mon in this matchup. And lastly we have Scarf Nidoqueen. So rocks here are pretty essential. Getting up hazards is going to be really solid for my Aero and my Mew to win this game. And also my Gren to be chipping down everything and taunting his fat mons trying to recover. Whilst I have rocks up and spikes up from Gren, I'm in a really solid position, and Scarf Nidoqueen isn't bad versus him at all. It gives me a solid Revenge to Finny with Sludge Wave. I am modest with like max special attack. I don't need to run a lot of speed with this given amount of speed. At +1, I outspeed Torn, and there's nothing else that bar faster Scarfers that can outspeed this Nidoqueen here. So it's solid with Focus Blast. I have a means of hitting, like if I'm like Last Mon Queen for example, and he has Hydreigon and a Mamoswine and a Rotom, I have Focus Blast to be able to hit all of those for solid damage. I can obviously take out the I can actually surprise kill the Hydra after rocks if he's non-bulk with Sheer Force Focus Blast, which is nice. And Earth Power is very nice versus his team, bar the obvious like Rotom and the Torn. Earth Power and obviously the Mesprit over here, and the Hydra. he has a lot of mons on his team that I can exploit Earth Power with. Sludge Wave is pretty nice as well, obviously for the Finny and doing a bit more damage to Venusaur. So Scarf Rocks here is really nice because I pretty much guarantee getting up rocks versus something like Torn that can't do a ton to me, or something like Finny as well that's scared up by Sludge Wave. So this is very nice. Having Nidoqueen as a Scarf on this game is solid. It does open me up to a weakness to Rotom though, so I'm gonna have to play carefully around Rotom if he does choose to bring it. Last game he brought Scarfed, and I know, well, I've got a pretty good feeling that he's not gonna bring Scarf Rotom again. He did mention earlier on in the season how close he was to bringing Specs Rotom, and honestly Specs is a little bit better here because whilst Scarf does outspeed Autonomized Selly if I'm a non-speed boosting nature, Specs really weakens Nidoqueen. Like it 2-KOs Nidoqueen. Nidoqueen can only switch in once, but Nidoqueen that is, unless I am like Piapa Berry or something. Oh, it's sorry, the 50% berry. So if he use Specs, he can just blow away a defensive, especially defensive Nidoqueen after some chip with an overheat. So I am expecting something like that. And my team as a whole doesn't have too much to respond to that. I do have the Muck here which can live 2 and rest up, provided rocks aren't up, or I can be really aggressive and switch into Aerodactyl on an overheat, which could obviously chew on. But that's going to be the team for the ITL finals up against Akki. I'm going to pause it here and we're going to see what Akki ended up bringing. Alright guys, so we're here with the finals match up against Akki for Season 6 ITL finals. Pretty hype, if I do say so, and yeah, it's looking to be a fun one. As you can see, Akki's not, he's actually opted not to bring the Mega Venusaur, which is a mon that I mentioned earlier on in the sort of overview of the matchup that I really felt would come. He's also chosen to leave the Finny at home, so yeah, very interesting team that he's brought. But the core of Rotom, Mamo, Metagross, and Hydra, 4 of the mons that I really feel will come to this game have come. Probably his best offensive mons against me. And then we see the Frostlass, so this 100% means Spikes. There's no other reason Akki would bring this to this game. I don't have a particularly awful ice weakness. I mean, I do have Nidoqueen and area here, but Ice isn't like Ice and Ghost aren't really like amazing scarfed options versus me or anything. It's just a trap by Muck. This is definitely going to be a Spikes Frostlass. I'm thinking either defensive Rocks Metagross or like offensive Rocks Mamoswine with like Rock Polish offensive Metagross in the back. Potentially Specs, most likely Specs, possibly Scarfed Rotom, although he does have like a bulky Hydra which can take on some autonomized variants of Celesteela if it's bulky enough, and he also has the Metagross which can hit it with a Thunder Punch. So that's kind of my thoughts at matchup. My game plan hasn't changed too much. The fact that I don't see Finny on his side means that Spikes from Gren are just amazing in this game, being able to hit, you know, chip down the Mamoswine, the Metagross, and the Frostlass. Obviously, like they, you know, stuff like Rotom, the Taunt, and the Hydra all avoid Spikes, but having that chip on Metagross is particularly nice for Aerodactyl, because Aerodactyl is looking very clean this game. I don't see a Stone Edge switch in bar Metagross, and because I do have Crunch on that, that's going to be really nice, you know, putting that thing in range of 2 crunches, particularly if it's an offensive variant. So if I can get Rocks up with Nidoqueen, that's going to be really important, because if you look at his team, you know, Rocks hit 3 things on his team for 25%, everything else by Metagross takes 12, and yeah, that's just going to be very, very nice for weakening things for Mew and putting things in range for Aerodactyl. In terms of lead, I am going to lead off with my Greninja. It beats his lead Mamoswine. It also beats potential lead Rocks Metagross, which is something he could do. I am EV to live a modest Scarf Dracomedia from a potential lead Hydreigon. I can also easily live Superpowers from Tornadus, Hurricanes with ease. I actually even live Scarf Volt Switch from Rotom Heat. That's how bulky this Greninja is. So we're going to lead off with my Gren. It's just being a little bit slow here. I'm going to lead off with Gren, as he does choose to lead off with Mamoswine here. Now this is a kind of matchup that I did sort of face in a few mocks, and I did anticipate when building. Chances are, like, if Aki assumes I'll play aggressively here, he has no reason not to go to Torn on a potential Scald or Surf. If he's really feeling himself and he feels like I'm going to make the aggressive play and Spike here, he can well stay in here and EQ. But honestly, I lose very little from just staying in here and clicking Scald, because if he does go to Torn, I scout his set, I determine if he's AV or not. I potentially get a burn if I am Scald, and if he goes Hydra, I can always scout his spread and set up a Spike the following turn. So he is going to make the switch out here into his Taunt, as I do go for the Scald there. Had he stayed in with Mamo, I put it in, I 2KO'd it with Scald unless he was some Assault Vest variant, or some sort of really bulky Mamo spread that could somehow live 2 Scalds. And I potentially got the burn there, which he would not want to risk turn 1, and if I did get it, then that would have just meant that Gren took EQs way easier from Mamoswine. So he's going to go out into his Taunt. That thing is very bulky, more than likely Assault Vest. So this turn I am going to set up Spikes, as he does outspeed and go for the U-turn here. So this is really nice. This is one of the benefits in running this kind of Gren versus his team. Although I am fast enough to creep something like his Hydreigon, I am slow enough to be outsped by a very, very fast Taunt. So I actually gain momentum in that sense, as he will get the fast U-turn out. I gain the ability to either fire for hit or set up Spikes, as he does choose to go out into his Hydreigon. Now this is obviously pre-Ultra Sun and Moon for anyone who may be confused there. Tornadus and Hydreigon don't have Defog, nor does Rotom, prior to Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, so his only defog options that he had on his roster, he hasn't chosen to bring. So once I get hazards, they're here to stay. So he's going to go out to his Hydreigon here. I'm going to get my lefties back, and it's at this point that Aki's going to realize that I'm a defensive Gren. I'm a fat Gren. He's going to see the lefties. I'm going to switch out into my Muck. Had no reason to stay in there and potentially take a Dracometeor there. He does actually reveal T-Wave, so had I stayed in or gone to something like Aerodactyl there on the Draco, which I could have well and truly eaten up, they would have got parried. So going into Muck here is a fairly drawback play, because fairly no drawback play in the sense that I have rest. I can always recover up on anything this Hydra wants to go for. Barring a Taunt set, the fact that he has no Finny means that rest is absolutely free, bar any Taunt mons on his team, so that's very nice. Muck is looking to go in this game. He's going to Thunder Wave me here, and that's perfectly fine. Rather be T-Wave than burnt. and like I said, I can always rest up. So this turn I'm going to make the switch out into my Gren, expecting him to go into Mamu here. At this point I think Aki realizes that hazards are going to be playing a massive factor in this game, and going into Mamu here on a potential poison jab from my Muck will be one of his better ways of setting up rocks. He can always live any 2 hits from Muck, unless I'm like offensive with like fighting coverage. He can live 2 hits, set up his rocks, or threaten anything I want to go out into with an Earthquake or an Icicle Crash. So this turn I am going to make the switch out into my Greninja, expecting him to make the double out to his Muck or even his Metagross, just wanting to get up his rocks. But he is actually going to click Dark Pulse this turn, and we're going to take that pretty nicely with Gren. I'm not really sure why he stayed in there in Dark Pulse. I think he made the Dark Pulse play expecting me to make the switch to Mew, predicting his Mamu to come in there, as I was a Taunt Will-O-Wisp Mew the last time we played. And if you look at his team, nothing but Rotom Appreciates coming in and taking a Wisp. So perhaps he expected Mew to be my switch in there. On the flip side, had I just clicked Knock Off or Poison Jab, I could have removed a potential item. This is one of his Z-move users, but if he was lefties or a plate, I could have removed that, or potentially got the poison there with the Poison Jab. He also may have been just wanting to scout out damage on Muck, wanting to determine my spread and item, knowing full well that he could live any hit from Muck, so perhaps that was his thought process there. Either way, going Gren there was a play that covered him going for Earth Power, because I did live Earth Power. It may have even put me in Torrent range, which would have been pretty nice for later on in the game. And it also covered him making the aggressive play into Mamoswine, because those kind of big plays this game are going to be critical against, you know, with players of our caliber. There's always going to be those big plays that you know, shift momentum in a huge factor in these kind of games. And had he gone Mamo there, I was just in a fantastic spot. I either got up a second spike, or I just clicked Scald and potentially burnt the Taunt or the Hydra there. So I stand by my play 100%. He chooses the Dark Pulse, and I'm just going to switch back out into Muck, as this turn he does attempt to T-Wave my Gren, and obviously I don't want to allow that to happen. Gren is one of my better checks to Mamo on this team. Unfortunately, this turn I do get paralyzed. That turn I believe I clicked Knock Off, and I would have been able to get critical information on this Mamoswine as well as removing his item. So that's definitely unfortunate, but you know, that's what the Yellow Magic does. So Yellow Magic, I just want to mention, was a pretty T-Wave was a pretty smart bring on Aki's part on Hydra. You actually don't see that used much, and it's definitely something that could have caught my Aerodactyl off guard had I brought that in on Hydreigon to be the you know, defensive Hydreigon response. It also could have caught my Gren, obviously, if I hadn't scattered for it. So pretty unfortunate that I did get parried there, and this is probably going to give him rocks, but there's not too much I can do about that. This turn I am going to switch out to my Gren. I mentioned earlier in the team overview that Gren is a pretty safe switch into Mamo if my Selly is nice and healthy, because he is going to be incentivized to click Icicle Crash versus my team as opposed to Earthquake, because I do have 2 EQ immunities. And Gren typically is not a Mamo switch in. Like, even Icicle Crashes are going to be doing a lot to a standard offensive Gren, so I am going to switch my Gren in here. If he goes for rocks, it immediately shifts the offensive momentum back into my favor, so this is important. His potential sash has been broken for all he knows. Scald could kill him at this range of health, unless he's a very bulky Mamoswine. So this immediately puts you know, me in a sort of favorable offensive position here, as he is forced to switch out into either Hydra or Taunt, or risk his Mamo getting killed or burnt here with the Scald. So this turn I am going to double out into Nidoqueen, expecting him to go into his safe switch in the AV Taunt, or even going out hard into Hydreigon. And I knew that my Nidoqueen would be able to live any hit from either of those 2 mons, just due to Nidoqueen's natural bulk and my minor investment in bulk. And as a result, I would be able to get up my Stealth Rock. So he is going to make the switch out here into the Taunt. We get him. This here is a turn that I was mentioning earlier. This is one of those turns that is very important in terms of being a real game-changing turn, in the sense that rocks here will allow me to pressure his team to a huge degree, as opposed to just having one round of spikes up there. So I was willing to make the aggressive play there, and it paid off. I don't recommend making those kind of aggressive plays unnecessarily, if you don't need to. If you know your opponent, like I do, I know Aki, if you know that your opponent will more than likely expect you to make the safe play, and you're in that sort of situation, it's okay to make those kind of plays, but don't do it recklessly, don't do it haphazardly. You have to have reasoning behind making those kind of aggressive plays. And in this situation it does work out, because I will be able to get rocks up as he does go out into Mamoswine here. So I will now be able to just switch back out into Greninja here as he chooses to switch out yet again into his Frostlass. So I think that turn he expected me to go into my Celesteela or my Mew, and this is the beauty of defensive Gren. Again, it's like, it's a kind of defensive response to Mamoswine that doesn't sort of allow him to capitalize on offensive doubles he may make, expecting you know, a sort of typical defensive response to Mamoswine to switch in there. So had I gone into either Selly or Mew, Frostlass would have been a fantastic switch in the sense that it either taunted, willowed, toxicked, or just set up spikes on my Mamo response. But because I am a you know, speedy defensive Mew, Gren I should say, it puts me in a favorable offensive position, unless I am of course slower than this Frostlass, and he actually does decide to creep my Mismagius, so he will be a little bit faster than me, and he will be able to set up a spike. But honestly, that's okay. I'd rather have my Gren healthy, honestly, because I can comfortably live Ice Shards even after this 24% of hazard damage I'll be taking. And this Mon is still very nice for the Metagross. I can still live Bullet Punches, and Taunt is extremely useful this game. So the fact that he has two rounds of hazards up in Rocks and Spikes is obviously a bit concerning, but I also have that on his side of the field, and I have Recovery on my side to back that up, as well as some speed that he's currently lacking, so that's pretty important. Though he does get a Spike up, which is very nice for him, as now my team will be more pressured to switch into this Behemoth in Specs Rotom. So this turn I am going to switch out into my Muck. He is going to fire off the Specs Overheat, and this is a set that I mentioned earlier in the kind of team overview. He was probably inclined to bring Specs because it does blow away especially defensive Nidoqueen with Rocks up, so he is going to go for Overheat here. And after the Black Sludge recovery, I will be left at 25. This is now a roll for him to kill. Like, he needs a mid to high roll to kill my Muck here with the Overheat. But the thing is, if he does choose to kill Muck, I get a free Calm Mind with Mew. And if you look at his team, nothing appreciates Calm Mind Mew. This Rotom is forced to trick me if he does want to check me. I outspeed this Mamoswine and I outspeed the Hydra, more than likely, depending on his speeds. I can also Calm Mind up and just click Aura Sphere versus the Metagross, and the fact that hazards are up means nothing is going to appreciate taking boosted hits from Mew. And if I do set up with Mew, I can pave the way for something like Aero to clean this game up, if not win outright with Mew here. So he's in a situation where he has to, you know, he has to really ask himself, does he want to allow my Muck to potentially have rest and heal up, or does he want to allow, you know, by switching out here, or does he want to kill Muck, remove it from the game, and allow my Mew to set up and potentially cause him large problems. So Aki is actually going to decide to switch out here into his Hydreigon, as I am actually going to rest up here. So fortunately we didn't get parried a second time there with the Thunder Wave, and we are able to rest up this turn. And now he is going to click Taunt here with his Hydra. So I'm going to proceed to stay in here and burn my second turn of sleep, as I don't expect him to make the switch out into his Mamoswine here. He may, because I am taunted and I can't use Sleep Talk. But if I switch here into something like Celesteela on the Hydra, which wouldn't be that bad of a switch, honestly, if I am predicting him to go into his Mamoswine is immediately pressured. So I am going to stay in here. I am going to burn a second turn of sleep as he does choose to go into his Taunt. Now, there's not much this Taunt can do to me. I am Spadef, as you guys saw earlier. And even if he knocks off here, I can just click Power Up Punch and fire off, very little damage, but it will be boosting my attack, meaning that whatever wants to switch in has to take a +1 hit from this Muck. So he is going to go for U-turn here, and he's going to switch back out into his Hydreigon. And it's at this point that I wake up and I just click Power Up Punch, and this does a solid amount. This does 19, so it does around a fifth to this Hydreigon, which is pretty nice. And this is going to put him in a tricky spot, because if I can weaken this Hydra, that's one less check to Scald from Gren. If Taunt gets burnt, then that thing is going to really not enjoy switching into Scalds from my Greninja. And if I can weaken this, that's just going to be even nicer for Gren. So he is in a pretty tough spot now. He is forced to switch out into his Rotom Heat, as I do just click Power Up Punch one more time. I really did kind of want to click Poison Jab there, although I did really fear him going into Mamoswine there, and also going into Metagross wouldn't have been nice. Getting a +1 Power Up Punch off versus the Metagross would have been very nice for my Aerodactyl as well as my Mew. So I was thinking kind of long term. I was thinking long game there, and had he chosen to stay in there with Hydreigon, I would have taken very little from a Dark Pulse, and obviously got up to +2 there with a Power Punch. But this does bring in the Rotom, and I know the only thing this Rotom can really do to actually threaten my Muk is click Trick here, because if he does click Overheat, I can always just rest on the turn he overheats, and then basically set up even further on this Rotom. So I am going to switch out into my Nidoqueen. Nidoqueen also isn't as necessary this game, because I've got my rocks up. Earth Power is nice, but he already has, he's got 3 things that are immune to it. Sludge Wave is nice, but he's got Metagross and Mamoswine which resist it. Then I have Focus Blast, Focus Blast is certainly nice in the sense that it handles Mamoswine Hydra, but it's walled by Evitorn. So Nidoqueen's in a bit of a tricky spot with its Choice Scarf, even though I am, I am a solid threat to his mons. He also, has the ability to switch out and just either dodge, completely avoid my Earth Power, or just be immune to my Sludge Wave. So yeah, Nidoqueen's usefulness isn't too high this game. It is the most expendable mon if he does choose to go for Overheat, because again, if he goes for Overheat here, he's going to kill my Nidoqueen. I get a free Calm Mind with Mew. So this is the important thing to consider here. So I am going to go into Nidoqueen as he does trick me. So I obtain his specs. He's going to Volt Switch here, which is the best play he could have made there, because he needs to get back into the game. Had I switched there into my Aerodactyl, for example, on his Overheat, which could be aimed at weakening this Nidoqueen, he would have basically got momentum. He would have got big damage off of my Aerodactyl there, and he would have been able to go out into something like Metagross, and that would have put me in a really tough spot. So I am just going to stay in here and Focus Blast. I have no reason not to. This Rotom cannot switch in anymore on these rocks, so this Rotom is basically death fodder at this point. If he chooses to go out into Tornadus, that could have been a play, but had I gone for Sludge Wave, it could have potentially 2-K'd this Torn, depending on my investment. So and depending on how fat his AV Torn is. So he's going to go for Volt Switch. I miss. He stays in a second time, not wanting this game to be decided, not wanting dumb hacks to play an influential role in this game. Of course, he could have gone Torn there and just saved Rotom as death fodder, but he chooses to stay in there. So hats off to Aki for not wanting to take a free dodge. I don't know in finals, but I don't really think it changed the game that much. But he's actually going to go into his Mamoswine here, and I think he forgot that I was. He thought he was a faster Mamoswine, because at this stage I am Specs. I'm not Scarfed. Rotom tricked its Specs to me, so I am Specs, not Scarfed. But he thought his Mamoswine would be able to outspeed my my Nidoqueen, but it turns out I am actually faster than him, and we both miss our attacks there. So pretty unfortunate. I would have been able to kill this Mamoswine, and that would have forced him to bring in his Torn the next turn to actually kill me, because or Hydreigon would have had to click its potential Z move, because yep, this Specs Nidoqueen is now actually a pretty big threat to his team. So unfortunate that we missed there, but what can you do? It's Focus Blast. He also misses his Icicle Crash, so it's like a null and void turn. Although we do learn from this that he is indeed slower than this Nidoqueen, so that's pretty important to know. So he is now going to switch out into his Torn. I am going to hit the Focus Blast this turn, and it does decent chip. That's a nice chip, 22. He is going to start firing off Icy Winds, as I will be able to hit him once more with a Focus Blast, get him down to about 29, and he will now take me out with a Hurricane. So it's one mon down, it's 5 vs 4, and now I will be able to bring in this this Aerodactyl and just click Crunch here, because there's not too much that I fear his Torn doing if for some reason he outsped me, although I was quite fast on this Aero. Had he switched into Hydreigon, I would have crunched into a Stone Edge. But I was really concerned about Metagross coming in there, as that thing could have capitalized on a Stone Edge versus the Torn. If you look at his team now, he has very little for Gren. He obviously has Hydreigon, but that thing is not going to enjoy switching in on rocks and taking a Scald into a potential Ice Beam if I did have that. Although obviously I do have Dark Balls on my set, but either way, Gren is looking pretty nice. I can comfortably live priority from both Mamoswine and Metagross, so Gren could potentially be a late game wink on here, but he is now going to go out to Metagross, and the only way this thing really proves a big threat to me at this stage in the game is if it is Rock Polish. Although I do have a full health Celesteela and a full health very bulky Mew, so obviously I'm still in a strong position, but By no means do I want him to allow him free setup. Neither do I want him to set up a sub. That could be a real issue for Selly. So, although I am flamethrower, I don't want to let that potentially. I don't know. I didn't want to. I didn't want to allow him to rock polish up basically. But even setting up a sub would be annoying, as that could allow him to get 2 hits off versus the Selly. So this turn I am going to taunt, as he does attempt to set up a sub. So Aero proving its worth here. I am going to stay in and crunch because I want damage on this. I'm confident that my Mew can beat the last 2 mons on his team, in Hydra and Mamu with Aura Sphere respectively. But if I can weaken this thing for Gren, or even just put it in range that it needs to switch out and take an extra like 17%, it will be in range of Aura Sphere from Mew after a Carmine. So I want to get this thing low. I want to keep it low. I don't want it to stay above 80, because then something has to take a big hit. So he is going to knock me out with Meteor Mash here, and he's going to get the raise. But it's not too important, because now Gren will be able to come in here and click Dark Pulse. Either knocking out this Metagross. He was confirmed lefty, so he's not Colba, which is nice. As now this Hydreigon is going to come in, and I'm just going to taunt this thing. Granted, I'm going to lose my Ninja in the process. I could have just clicked Scald or something, but had he roosted up there, that was just going to mean that he was out of range of Aura Sphere from my Mew, because chances are he was pretty bulky. So I wanted to keep this thing in guaranteed range of Aura Sphere. As you see, Mew is going to be able to knock him out here. And the next turn, Metagross will come in. He's going to take that nice spike, which is going to put him pretty low in range of 2 Aura Spheres, as he does just go for the Meteor Mash here. And we take 35, so we chew that up pretty nicely. And we will be able to knock him out here with the Aura Sphere. So Mamu is going to come in. He's going to be pretty low after taking the initial hit and being whittled down by spikes. He's going to be in range of Aura Sphere here. And that is going to be ITL Finals for Season 6. So a very, very fun game. Very intense game. I think Aki played really well. I got him on a few really aggressive switches that I made, and aggressive plays, but he was in it the whole time. Yeah, it was definitely a lot of prep went into this one, as always for finals matches. But whenever you're playing one of the gods in the format, it's you got to put a lot of prep in. You got to play well. So that's certainly what happened here. And yeah, just hats off to Aki for a really solid prep on his part too. He was actually Darkinium Z Hydra, as you saw. So my man did not fear Aromatisse. I actually asked him after the game. I was like, dude, in both games we've played, like, your Hydra set has been hardwalled by Aromatisse, like what? And he's like, nah, he said you were not bringing that piece of shit to any game. So yeah, he knew. I mean, he didn't respect it because he didn't have to. He knew I wasn't gonna bring it. So that's pretty funny. But yeah, I think he played really well, and he built a really solid team. Yeah, I'm very happy with the way I played and prepped for this game. I thought I positioned my win cons in a very nice way. I'm just happy this defensive Gren came through, because this thing underwent so many different changes to its spread, its moveset. Yeah, I mixed this thing up quite a bit until I came up with a set that I was pretty happy with. So yeah, always good to see work like that pay off in a game. Selly didn't actually get to touch the field, unfortunately, but it was a pretty boring Selly set, so it's not like it was a flashy set that didn't get to see the light of day. But having that defensive mon in the back was always nice. Insurance versus a rock polish Metagross, and versus Mammoth One if that thing ever got out of control. Cool to see Mark put in work too. I think Power Punch definitely caught Aki off guard, and he was not expecting that. So that also would have allowed me to set up versus a Taunt Finny. That was another reason why I had it. So yeah, it was definitely a fun game. Go check out Aki's channel. I'll leave his side of this match in the description below. He uploaded this game a while ago. I've just been pretty slack with YouTube in general. But yeah, he did upload this match a long time ago. So like directly after it happened. So go and check out his perspective if you haven't already, to hear his thought process and sort of get insight into what he brought to this game, because he's a fantastic builder and player. One of the best in the format easily, so you can learn a lot from watching him. And yeah, that's gonna be ITL Season 6. Definitely a fun season. A lot of fun to use this team. I did really enjoy using Aero. Obviously, it was very frustrating at times having to rely on such inaccurate moves, and losing. I think I lost 3 games this season, and they were as a direct result of Aero missing Stone Edge and Aquatail. So that says a lot about how reliable Aero is as a mega. But in terms of fun. It's it's great fun. I think I said it in one of my previous uploads. You're making a trade-off for accuracy and reliability in exchange for power and just great speed and very solid bulk. So it's it's a decision you have to weigh up. You have to come to terms with whether you're okay with that, whether you're comfortable with making that trade. And if you are, it's definitely a fun mon. You should definitely pick it up and give it a go. Obviously the rest of the mons on my team are pretty sick. I actually don't think I even brought Aromatisse to a full game, but it's decent. It's not bad. I'm not going to shit talk Aromatisse. It was fun to use the rest of these mons. Celesteela is the best mon in the format. It's just so much fun. Obviously Landorus is too, but Mew was amazing. Mew, my boy from MPL Season 5, so that was so good to use that thing again. Greninja I've fallen in love with recently. Incredible mon, as you guys would have seen by this season, and other people using it. And Muck was really fun to use again. I used that last season in ITL, and it was great to pick that up and have it see success in the most important match of the season. So hope you guys learned maybe a thing or two from this season of the ITL, and you enjoyed the ride. Chances are I'll be back next season. It's run by my boy Aki the GOAT, so I can't say no to him. And yeah, get hyped for that. I'll tell you guys, it's pretty exciting. MPL Season 8 is just around the corner, a couple of weeks from drafting, so yeah, that's definitely exciting. I'm pretty excited to draft my own team again. It's been a while since I actually drafted my own team, so looking forward to seeing what MPL Season 8 holds. That's going to be about it. I hope you guys did enjoy. Drop a like if you did, and let me know your thoughts in the comments on the season and obviously this finals match. And yeah, I'll catch you guys next time.